One of the first things you're going to want to do when you're thinking about how to start implementing blended learning in your classroom is to think about the layout of your classroom. Because you're not going to have students just sitting in the typical rows or even just groups, you want to think about where can you best situate your students so that they can do their best learning. So you're going to want to think about areas that students can work individually, and then also areas where students can work collaboratively away from the students that are working individually so they're not distracting each other. And then you'll also want a space for you as the teacher to be able to work with individuals or with small groups. And I think it's a pretty important key to think about when you're thinking about where you're going to be working. Can you see what's happening in the rest of the classroom? That's going to be a huge key. That will just kind of eliminate any other little issues that might be happening if your back would to be turned to the rest of the class. So that's a kind of a great classroom management piece right there. So when you have kind of your space created, you're going to want to create some blended learning guidelines as well. So we have rules and expectations for our classes, and this is no different. So you need to think about, what do you want your classroom to sound like? What will your blended learning classroom look like? And these are great to create with your students so that they take some ownership of these guidelines also, and write them out so that they're clearly put for everyone to see, and if you need to refer back to them or practice some more. And in a blended learning classroom also, students will be on devices. That's part of blended learning. So creating some technology guidelines, so that the students clearly know what is expected to them of them when they are on technology. And so I think along that same line, it's a good idea to create a technology contract so that everything is laid out very clearly about what the expectations are for the students and what you expect of them. They sign that contract. And I think it's even a good idea for moms and dads to sign that so that everybody's on the same page there. So that's a great classroom management piece as well. So the next thing you're going to want to do is develop routines and practice a lot. So the rest of this video, we're going to look at a couple of routines that it's a good idea to practice, and then we'll have a few more in the next video as well. But one of the first things is with devices. How do you expect them to use devices? How do you expect them to carry the devices and put the devices away? So that's one thing that you need to look at. The next thing is transitioning to new spots. So if you are using a rotation model in your classroom, which a lot of lower elementary or even upper elementary classrooms use, how do you expect your students to transition? Are you okay if they're moving at different times? Do you want them all to move at the same time together? One strategy I saw is where if the teacher says stop, they all stop, they point to where they're heading next, and then they move. Because I know even in my class, I'll have kids that are like, wait, what? Where am I going? And then it just becomes a little bit chaotic. So it helps just to smooth it a little bit if they all are on the same page of where they're going to go. And at the same time, too, you want some type of warning system for the students when it's about time for them to switch. That gives them time to wrap up whatever it is they're working on, clean up if maybe they were doing some type of science experiment or things, gives them time to clean up. Something that I use in my classroom is a wireless doorbell. So it allows me to ring it. Even if students are collaborating together and talking, it's loud enough that they can hear it. They know that's their cue to freeze, look at me, and wait for instructions. So maybe that's a 2-minute warning. Maybe that's, whoops, it's time to switch, whatever that might look like. Putting a timer on the board is another great thing that you can use. So in the last video, I'll give you a few more routines that I think are helpful when you're trying to create this type of a classroom.